Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Dave Wilson of the Ring at Hire Show. Hey, I got Darlene Evans. I say Grimes or Grims?
Grimes, yeah.
Grimes. All right.
Yeah.
We have a great show today, and we're going to talk about a lot of great things and introduce Darlene, and we will be right back after this. Oh, you got to love that new video, don't you?
I love it. There's so many things that stand out on that video to me. And every time I watch it, there's something else that stands out. Future of work. The robots are coming, and I know that makes people anxious. The robots are going to take our jobs, but this gives us the opportunity to really use our human skills. So it's about, how do we develop those skills? The robots need us humans.
That's it.
And I saw collaboration, I saw innovation, all these things that are really popping for employers right now.
It is, and thanks. That was the first one. I was telling you where I got it off that Fever app for $17. And like I told you, he knows me so well. I think it's in Pakistan that we made that in one take. And he knows the vision. You were the first one that said that. And that's where the vision aligns to where, your AI and emotional intelligence, which we're going to tackle that. But I believe, like you said, that's what it's about. Working together sounds crazy, but you're working together.
Right.
But, first of all, Darlene, let's introduce yourself and what you do.
So my name is Darlene Evans, as you've already said, and my background is in learning and organizational development. So I worked for decades at a firm. And right now I am out on my own, and I'm working to build consulting and coaching. I would really like to be engaged in career development coaching, leadership coaching. There's also workshops that I would like to do for people and combine those things. So workshops and then providing coaching afterwards.
All the way there. And you are located in Denver, right?
I'm in Denver.
Broncos.
I
know. Denver, they're going to win maybe one day. Jeez.
Next year
it is. I wanted to I got a lot of questions for you. And what is Lumina Spark Practitioner?
So Lumina Spark is a company that's it's headquartered in London, and they have several different programs. The program that I am working on right now that I've been certified in is it's a traits assessment, personality assessment. I really like it because it really peels the onion, and none of us are just one thing. We're how much of one thing, like extroversion and introversion. I'm an off the chart extrovert, and every assessment will say I'm an extrovert, but
Right.
there is a little tiny bit of introversion. So instead of telling me I'm an extrovert,
Can you break those two down? Explain each one of them?
Yeah. So what an extrovert does, and this you'll find, an extrovert probably uses 25,000 words a day. And that's because an extrovert thinks out loud. So when I'm talking, I'm probably also processing and thinking. It doesn't mean this is my decision. I'm processing through it. And I get energy from being around people. I feed off of that. But an introvert is a little bit more introspective and thoughtful. They think quietly. When they speak, they have already gone through the process of getting to what they've said. They actually use about 5 or 10,000 words a day.
Trying to think what I am. I'm trying. If everybody's out there watching the show, you got to stop. What are you? I just don't. I don't know what I am. I think I'm in the middle. I don't know.
And that's, that could be right. So the beauty about this assessment is it really helps you to work well with each other. If you're in teams, how are you working with each other? Very often when we don't understand the differences of how we process, how we communicate, how we make decisions, what happens is we can have conflict because we don't understand someone is just very different from us.
Right.
But when we realize the intent and impact don't always match. And so when we can understand the diversity that's there in how we think and process and how we prefer to work, then we can become much more cohesive and build trust.
Is that like when you say is that like the kind of test, the personality test that we have around here? Is it in different detail about, like I like to work in small teams? I like, there's a lot of questions on those personality tests. I just want to know if that's what it kind of related to, the same thing.
Yeah, kind of like that. Like I'm a person who will throw out crazy ideas because I'm always questioning the status quo. Somebody else who's much more practical, they like predictability. They like to, work in the details. And so they might be a person who comes in and every day they like that routine and they approach change very differently.
Right.
For me, I might be throwing out all those things that are freaking everyone out. Like she's going to change everything. And it's like, no, I'm just thinking. I'm just throwing out ideas.
And that's more me. And I love this next one. We've talked about it 2 times since I've talked to you. I love this emotional intelligence. Now, if everybody can if you're watching the show or you watch it later on tonight, emotional intelligence. It's kind of like I said about the video I just did. And that's what you're talking about. It's right. Is that
Yes, it can be a part of that. Emotional intelligence, if I was going to sum it up, I would say it's being aware of how you're showing up with other people and adjusting because you're able to read the room. Can you read the room when you come in, right? So emotional intelligence is being aware of what you're feeling. How might that be impacting how you're communicating with other people and interacting? And then reading them, using empathy to understand how you can shift your behaviors to have a better impact.
Now I know what you're saying. That makes sense from what I was thinking about. This is totally different because when you walk in, you're talking like your body language, how you feel, what you feel coming back from even an interview or sales meeting or anything. How did you feel? How do you make them feel? I think is that what you're talking about right there?
Yeah. And it's really important. I think if you build those emotional intelligence skills, you have the ability to then build psychological safety and people can bring their whole selves into the interaction. And that is critical. Yeah.
And you even said that during today's world, that's so important. As like I said, you can compare that kind of like staffing, the same thing with an interview, because you're reading each other. And I believe you can turn it around. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you need to really, it's going to be critical for people who are interviewing to understand how they're showing up. Are you getting a lot of interviews? And then how are you showing up if you start getting ghosted or you don't hear back or you don't, but even in the workplace, it can help you to build trust if you build those emotional intelligence skills. Which can build higher performing teams, help you deal better with conflict, which conflict just means we see things different. It's when we don't deal well with it that it gets out of hand.
Well, then how do you feel? This is a question. See, I told you, I write all these down and I don't know. When you do that, how do you feel that it's affected with everybody working from home? How do you feel that? How do you see that on the video? How do you see that talking on a phone? And before we were always face to face. Now look, everybody gets to look at this little dot up here and we get to talk to each other. But do you think you can get the same feeling it's transferring over. You understand? Is that?
Yeah, when you're, I think you have to, it does translate. And I think when you're on a video, you may have to amplify up or tune things down a little bit. As we were talking before the call, even, I'm one of those people where I have to tune down.
Right.
Because, my volume is always high. I always have this high energy and I have to tune it down. But you have to be just as aware on a video as if you're in person.
And that's what I found, because I talk too much. And then a lot of the recruiters I used to have, everybody says, Dave, you don't listen. I'm like, I do. It goes in, but it might take 10 minutes before it comes out. So I try to learn to just slow down. I think that I've slowed down, listen, absorb it, and then I can respond.
Yeah.
That seems to be, whew.
That also makes me think of the power of silence. I know silence is very awkward and we don't like it, but in person or on video, just take a few minutes, especially if you're interacting with people who like to think quietly, give them that time to do it. And it's very awkward, but it is powerful. What happens when we don't use it is we tend to start filling up the space with filler, words that may not be relevant to the conversation, or it could take it sideways. It doesn't give people time to process.
And that makes sense, because if you're in a group and if you don't know this certain person, like they're new or they've been there, but they're very quiet, I don't think you need to go away from the Zoom call or video or say, wow, that person's quiet. That doesn't mean that they don't understand. But like you said, I didn't think of it that way. Quiet, that's their personality. But they could be a very good, they could have that emotional intelligence. They should have that. They could have that leadership, but you just don't see it.
You don't see it. Yeah. And they're probably you can't see how engaged they are, but those wheels are turning and they're thinking, and we just need to give them that space. I will also say, I know that everyone's suffering Zoom fatigue, and I get it. I have suffered that as well. So we do have to let people have their cameras off once in a while to just,
right.
On the other side of that, though, that's why the camera is so important, because, 93% of what we are interpreting when we're communicating with people is not the words that are being spoken.
Right.
So that 93% is all missing if we can't see somebody.
What would you recommend? How do you get that message across? If you got 6 to 10 people on a Zoom, here again, another question we didn't talk about, but how do you get that? What would you say to somebody? How do you get that message to all 6 of them and believe that they understand what you're even talking about?
I would say step back and understand them first. So when we are asking people to be on camera, we're invading their homes. And, for
Right.
people who are more private. So I think what you do first is step back, always step back and listen. And it goes to Covey, seek first to understand, right? So listen to what their concerns are. When you take the time to step back and listen to another person, understand why they are having the feelings that they're having about something, they are way more open to listening to you, and you can influence them, right? And where can you give them choices? We all love to have choices. So when it comes to that camera, where can you give them choices? And then, we have non-negotiables about sometimes when the camera needs to be on.
I like that. I never thought about shutting it off and, give them that time. And that leads me to a question that I always hear about with videos, and whether it's interviewing, let's just say there is unconscious bias. A lot of people say, well, I don't like the way I look on camera or video. I don't like this. I don't like that. But in today's world, listen, I told you I have a video interview tomorrow. It's the way it is. So, everybody, I think there's unconscious bias, yes, but there's unconscious bias of meeting face to face also.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's my opinion. I think it's everywhere. But when you said that, when you're interviewing somebody on the Zoom, I wouldn't always assume that they might act differently in person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking, I talk too much, but
no. So, really, this is a really good segue to go from stepping back and listening to understand, and then thinking about unconscious bias. So I have this analogy that I use is that we all have our belief goggles. So we interact with the world through those belief goggles. And what is painted all over those is our own experience that has built every day through our lives, our successes, our failures, our education, our values. And we think that when we interact with others, that they're wearing their belief goggles look just like ours, but they don't, right? And so unconscious bias comes, the way that I would describe it is, I think everybody experiences the world the same way that I do. But because you have not experienced something that somebody else has, that doesn't mean that they haven't experienced it and it's not real. Right. So that's that again, stepping back and listening to understand people and listen with the intent to be persuaded. Listen openly, get that judgment out of there. Right.
Get those key words in there for me. I'm like, listen, I love all those key words you're saying.
And you don't have to be persuaded. Right. And I know unconscious bias, we've been talking about that very much in the world of racial divisions lately, and that is very true. There are people different than me that I cannot walk in their shoes, but I can certainly step back and say, I've not experienced that. So, and
that makes sense. Experience what people have experienced. But see, I love diversity because when I was at Johnson & Johnson years ago, oh my God, I met people from employees from all around the world, and it was awesome. But back then, I didn't even think of anything like that.
No.
Now.
That's where unconscious bias is. The thing is it's unconscious. So when we see something and we're having a reaction to it, we are putting on our own judgment on it. It creates this bias, right? But we're not conscious of where that's coming from or that it's even happening. And I see a lot of people say that there's no such thing. And it's like, oh, there is.
Yeah. I had Gail Miller on, and she's from a TED Talk show, and that's her specialty. And I'll tell you what, when I first talked to her, when you know what you're talking about, that person, I was like, wow, I think I am biased in some ways. And she said that's not bad, because a lot of people don't realize it's not like a heavy bias, but in a way, everybody has a little bit of it. And I was like, wow, because what I've learned from it is I never assume anyone. I mean, I never assume. I always listen and then think about it, because if you assume, there it goes. It's like, for example, I had a girl last week. She sent me her resume, but she had 6 to 8 jobs on it. Now, I could have went like this. No. But when I talked to her, she said, oh, Dave, I love working for staffing agencies. I work when I want and do consulting when she wants. So normally I would have just said no. But if I didn't read it and talk to her, never would have got a hold of her.
Right.
And that just took me there. The next thing, this one, my left, Scrum Master. I said it right. Take it out.
Scrum Master. So Scrum is, it's a different methodology around getting things done, around project management. And it's very much associated, we think of it as far as creating applications, programming, but it's really being used in a lot of different places. Even HR is using it, or starting to, right? It's not specifically just for technology. We think of project management, we think of waterfall, where you create this timeline and everything happens, this happens, and then this, and then this, and it stretches that project way out.
I love it.
But what Scrum does is, it is not waterfall. It's, it's how many different things can be going on at the same time. It's also building cross-functional teams, right? So anyone who's a boundary spanner might like this. But you're bringing in different ideas from all of those people. You're actually giving the work to the people who are closest to it. What a Scrum Master does is leads that as a servant leader, right? So it's not a project manager who creates the project and pushes it out and say, here's your deadlines, this is what you're going to do.
Right.
You're giving that to where those who are closest to the work.
I love the way you say that. I told you before, I love words, and the tidal wave, and it does. It's like this and this, and all your curves, everything's coming in at once, and then it smooths out, kind of like your plan. You're getting to that. You want it to smooth down, but you're going to have those ripples. So I like that. That's something I've never heard of. I had to ask for that.
The big thing about it is it takes the waste out of what you're doing, which is why things get done faster.
Gets done faster on there.
Yeah.
The next one I'm going to kind of add it all into this one question. I'm sorry, I always talk too much again.
No.
Change management, performance management, and vendor management. We talked about how the vendor management, can you explain how that goes into performance and also change?
How vendor management aligns with performance and change? Wow, I kind of see those three things as being very different, although you can see where they could come together. When I think about vendor management, what you need to think about with your vendors is you want to make sure that they align with your organization. So do their values align? Those vendors, they represent your company when you are working with them, right? So you want to be able to hold them accountable. You want to make sure that you have aligned values. When I go back to performance management, and somebody needs to come up with a much greater name, because performance management, to me, that just sucks the life out of me. It just, the way that we think about performance management traditionally is you set your goals at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, you get this evaluation. And it's really it's everything that probably you didn't do wrong. Maybe you did some great things and it's on there. Right. It's really, it's history focused, right? An organization the organization I worked with for a long time, they came up with a great performance management model. And it's really, leaders should be constantly meeting with their teams about what they're doing, right? Goals should be a conversation at least once a month. Especially now, goals can shift really fast in this VUCA world that we're in, right?
We need to work together so much more now.
Yeah.
Because that brings me, like when you said, like I think of, when you said the performance, you're measured, but then that change management is evolved through the whole year. I mean, if you don't change, if that makes sense from my part, is the changes. I tell everybody about the pivoting. If you're not pivoting every 2 weeks or something, even with your clients, it's not just the staffing companies, it's the corporations that they staff for. If you don't align, or if you're not performance, like you said, why wait? You can't wait 6 months to say, well, we couldn't do this. I mean, I get what you're saying there.
Yeah. And when you wait till the end of the year, you have people who didn't get feedback they should have gotten, with the intent to be helpful, not to, criticize, but they don't have a chance if you're not meeting with them and talking about that. And if they don't know the goals even changed, and those goals are going to change. Goals have really become living documents at this point.
I agree with that. Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. And in the past, the way that I have seen goals, I mean, we do the same thing in the organizations, in our work lives, as we do when it comes to our New Year's resolution, right? When we set a New Year's resolution, when do we think about it again? The next New Year's Eve.
You're right. No, that's the truth there.
Yeah. And then we realized I didn't think about it again. I didn't talk about it. I didn't create a plan. So I didn't achieve it. And many people don't even set them anymore because they don't achieve them. There's a real danger of that happening in the workplace if we think of them that way.
Do you blame that on, this is the way I feel. When it comes to performance, let's just say, I always like to gear it towards staffing, an individual, one of your team members, they're not performing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I always say that's where the leadership comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just sitting back saying, hey, oh no, he or she, they're just slow, or they don't get this done, we just keep them for this reason. These times have changed.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, if you're not talking to that employee, like you said, I like when you said, bring them in once a month, something to engage them. to get them to see where you're at, because you need to provide that leadership. If you've done everything for that candidate, then I believe, listen, you've given them a chance. You've given them the tools. Maybe they're not cut out for it then, but I just go back to management all the time, leadership.
Yes. And, it's time to build our leadership skills and start using those a lot more. A lot of leaders have learned how to manage from their managers, that traditional management framework, right? So leaders should also be building leaders. So I would encourage people to also build their own leadership skills.
Right.
Schedule time with your manager to go in and talk to them. Help lead them and coach them to change at the same time. Leadership skills need to be built at every single level. And so we all need to pick up that torch and help our leaders. And leaders that should be one of the most important things. You're there to lead people, not necessarily to be doing all these different things.
Right.
You're there to be leading people, coach them, build your coaching skills and be coaching them.
And I like when you say those words like that, because like with videos and everything today, with people working at home, how do you manage people? How do you do this? And you said it, I think, as you speak to one-on-ones, you bring that person in, you might not have thought this person was thinking that and having that problem, but you need to show them. And if you don't know, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm going to find somebody that does.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's what leaders, they're willing to be vulnerable and to be humble. And if they don't know, say, I don't know. And people will respect you way more for that. And if you say you're going to find out, go find out, right?
Come back.
Yeah.
That word comes into my favorite word of your whole LinkedIn profile is whoa. Yeah, I know. Whoa, WOO. As simple as it's going to sound, everybody. Whoa, take it out.
So woo is my top strengths. So those 5 strengths on my LinkedIn profile are my top 5 Clifton from the Clifton Strengths Finder. Woo is winning others over. Right. And what is really involved with that is emotional intelligence and social intelligence, and being able to read not just the room, but what's going on all around you.
I love it. And how do you explain that to somebody? It sounds so simple. It does. I mean, winning others over. What does it mean? Like winning others over, does that mean you're trying to, when I think of that, I'm like, oh boy, I'm kissing the bosses, say, hey, I don't think that's what it means, but it sounds like but as a team, you need to come together. Is that?
Yeah. So it goes back into that stepping back and understanding others first. So winning others over is really about the ability to influence people.
Okay. That makes more sense there.
Yes.
I'm thinking about winning them over to say, hey, I'm going to give you food if you do this, or I'm going to give you lunch or something, and that makes total sense. And I like that word. Here we go. I wrote it down. Ideation.
So that is, so that's the ability to come up with different ideas for making improvements or for driving change or questioning the status quo. So ideation is always creating ideas. And I'm one of those people that once I start thinking through ideas, especially if I'm talking to other people, because that's how I process is out loud. So I might start coming up with many ideas, right? So I'm always questioning the status quo, what we could do different. Doesn't mean I'm going to put down the gavel and go, this is what we need to do. But the ideas they're just always coming.
Can you see that in a person? Do you feel what you do? Can you see it?
If you make it safe, and one of my philosophies is psychological safety is the heartbeat of innovation.
Psychological safety
is the heartbeat of innovation. And so you need those idea people, and you need to give them space to talk. If they feel like they can't talk or their ideas will go nowhere, but open that up for people. Even if you don't use their ideas,
Right.
find a way to reward the fact that they did it. Maybe you have an award for the best idea that we didn't use, but it was important, it got said.
I like that. I like that. I'm writing down the little words there. The next one I like is the includer. I like that word, includer. On my part, that kind of means like, hey, I include everybody, or I take ideas, I do this in a team environment. Is that basically what you're talking about there?
Yeah, so think about everybody that you should be including and why you should be including them. You know, sometimes we leave people out that we shouldn't be leaving out. And one of the ways, that might look is somebody asking for help or going and involving people that you don't really need the
Right.
help, or you don't just include them. This is a big one for leaders, right? Bring those people with you. Don't take the high profile, don't take the most fun things. Bring them with you. Include them, right?
And when you say that, it brings me back when I was in the paper industry years ago, like 25 years ago. It was a union environment. I was the youngest supervisor. Everybody else had been there, my dad, 35, 40 years. And you always had a lot of complainers. There was a couple of them really complain. But what I learned was them not just to write them up because you really couldn't because it was a union, but you really needed that person, because when the management would come up with an idea, we had to bring it out to them. And then you can't do this because of that. Or I'm like, wow, you could utilize them for a tool of like, okay, I get it. And then go back to your team and say, you didn't think about this, did you?
You know, those people are so important, and we call them resistors when it comes to change.
That's okay, that's better.
Yeah. And you know, we kind of try to, ignore that, or we try to get them to stop.
Right.
But we need those people. Those people probably are the ones who are very interested in, we need to know the impact on us. We need to know exactly the rationale why we're doing this. We know where the cracks are and what you're not thinking of. They're also they are the people that if you include them, they will make your change more successful.
That's what it was. It might have been a bumpy road.
That's right.
Don't listen to that person. They don't know what they're talking about. No, maybe they've done the job for 35 years. They know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Those are the people closest to the work. Don't do to them, include them.
Oh, you say these things all the time. You come up with these little, I get them all written down. Look at them all. I'm like, I just like those little things. I got one more for you is we talked about, what do you see in your type of business now that is kind of happening with, we talked about everybody working from home. And when you set up a team, what do you see some of their struggles like an HR person would have, or a team member? Does that make sense? I'm trying to question that like that.
Oh, there's a couple things that I've had conversations with a few people about in the last couple of weeks that actually do come to mind. One is culture, and we're probably all hearing this, right? My people can't work from home because we will lose the culture, or the culture won't sustain, or it's like, well, that's a culture issue. That's not a working from home issue. And that might be a leadership issue.
Wow, you put all three of them there right there. Just like I heard you say three different things, like you went boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. So you know what? First of all, step back and trust it. Whatever culture you had in place, it did move with the remote workforce. It is there. Culture is how we do things, how we interact, how we communicate. Now, some of those things might be those things that we're missing. So if it's the water cooler chat, find ways to do the water cooler chat, right? Some people will set up a Slack, or they have different channels on Microsoft Teams.
Right.
And some leaders are setting up meetings and sending lunch home, having lunch delivered to their employees' home, right? You can do a Zoom happy hour. I had somebody tell me last week, well, what if somebody doesn't drink? And it's like, well, they can drink soda. The idea is getting together, not drinking.
It's a lot safer.
Yeah, that's right. So just set up those things, that you used to do in person. And we're getting the opportunity now to get back in person again. But the culture is there. whether
Well,
you're working remotely or not.
and to finish things up, when we talked about that, is how people right now, we hear this big thing, like you said, people are going to leave their companies. What did you call that in September? You said about leaving.
Oh, yes. So employees have seen that
Right.
employers actually can let them work remotely. And I mean, they did it overnight. People picked up their desks and went home, and
Yeah.
they did it overnight, right? So more than before COVID hit, what we are going to see is more employees wanting that. Now, there are people who will want to work in the office. And I've looked at several surveys, and most employees would really like to have a hybrid. They'd like to have that hybrid, and have some choices around that. But if employees can't get what they want to be here, what I tell people is the company that you work for, if it allows you to be who you are when you're not at work,
Right.
that's a great alignment, right?
Sure.
And so what employees have figured out is when I can work like this, that really can allow me to be who I am when I'm not working.
Right.
So it's called the Great Resignation. It's going to be a great migration of employees. They will move. They will be happy to. We've seen it. Nobody stays in a job for 25 or 30 years anymore. People, we know that people will have 6 or 7 different careers or more by the time they retire. So our workforce is willing to move jobs. And
Well, on that subject, when you said that, I had told you, oh, how do you get people back in the office? And the simple I was to say is, well, you just tell them. But you said the same thing. It's just like saying with millennials and all this, you have to cater if you want to do. But if you just say, come back to the office, you're going to lose those good employees. I'm sorry. I turned myself on that, because then I'm like, wow, then I might lose 2 or 3 really good people over what? By saying, just get in here. It's not like that.
no, it's not like that. And even if you have to, step back and just listen.
Yeah.
More than anything, people want to be heard and understood. And you know what? They might find a company where they can work from home, or they can do it part-time from home.
That's what I'm talking about. Darlene, I'm going to thank you for taking your time. It's not too bad. I said 30 minutes, 37. I really appreciate it. I know you're in Denver and I'm in PA, and we have the Eagles in Pittsburgh, but Denver. But thank you so much. And I've enjoyed talking with you 2 times prior to the show. And, what I like to take is LinkedIn, what I've learned, if utilized in the correct way. I know people complain about it, say this, but if you utilize, look, I just learned so much from a colleague, and you met from Andre. We both knew Andre. So that's how we met. Andre is a great Andre Young. He's a great man, boy, to connect with. And that's how we connected.
Yeah.
And you can really learn so much on LinkedIn and not fall into all that Facebook stuff and, there, but learn from the leaders. Like I had a call last week from a gentleman in New York that somebody sent me to just to help, for my job search. And he took 30 minutes of his time of listening to me, and he sent me a plan. He did. He sent an email. He said, this is what I should do. This is what I've heard that you said. And I was like, wow, free.
Exactly. That's a big thing. Well, and a lot of people think about LinkedIn just for the job search. Keep nurturing your LinkedIn network and keep using it for learning and reaching out to people and connecting. I met with someone a week ago who another person had said, call Darlene. She'd be a great person. She would like to transfer in to the career that I've been in. And people are absolutely willing to help. Yeah. So,
it is.
Yeah.
So if in closing, if you had to, who is Darlene Evans and what do you do and what kind of advice you can, give to people, colleagues on watching the show or tonight or tomorrow, what would you say?
So I am working on building my own coaching called Leadership Kiosk right now. And what I would say, I would tell everybody, we are in a world where the pace of change and the complexity of change is, it's just, we've never seen this amount of change before, and it's not going to slow down. It's just going to be getting more frequent and more complex. Build your leadership skills. And no matter what level you are, what are those leadership skills? And leaders, build your leadership skills, build your emotional intelligence skills. Go out and look for what are employers looking for when it comes to human skills. We have called them soft skills. That doesn't give them the importance they deserve. There are human skills, people skills. So
that way better the way you said it.
Yeah. And I'll look at what is your career, and always keep an eye on what is changing, because what is necessary in your career to stay relevant is changing faster than ever before. So how do you stay up to date? You don't learn a career and then work in it for 20 years anymore without it ever changing.
No, I've had HR directors of 20 some years that have lost their job and, let's say, trying to get back into the job market again.
Yeah.
That reminds me of that, because a lot of people now, they have to adapt to change. Well, we never did this way. Well, welcome, like you said, to the real world. Things have changed. And that's why, like yourself, consultants, career development, years ago, I didn't believe I heard of that as much. Now, I see why you would need that. You need somebody to give you that guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. So get a coach, get a mentor, stay relevant, get ahead of the game, future-proof your career, become continuous learners.
That makes sense. All right, everybody, I want to thank Darlene, and it's been a great show. And I know we're going to be keeping in touch. So
absolutely,
we're going to do another show again, too, and bring some guests in and try to, help people and just see what we can do. So on that note, everybody have a great night and see you soon.